So, Larry, thank you so much for coming and joining us today and helping us get ready for our board meeting next week. We're excited to learn from you and kind of answer any questions you have so that our training for our board can be as inclusive as possible.
Absolutely. Remind me one more time the time and date. Okay, it's on the 18th and it's going to be at 4 o'clock. Is that correct?
That's
okay,
correct.
I just wanted to confirm that.
Yep, and we're gonna do our just housekeeping in the very beginning of the meeting, and then just put you on first so that we can get you out of there and learn all we can in an hour.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely talk for an hour on this. I was actually just going through some of my files, and there are so many topics related to facades. You would be amazed all the different things that you could cover. And so, an hour is really going to be stretching it. So I think one thing that'll be important to do, hey, Cindy, I don't think we've met before, not in person or anything.
No, we haven't. Hi, Larry. How are you?
Hey, good.
Good. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. So I think one thing that's going to be important to do, and I realize that, and maybe even today, is you guys just keep some notes as we're talking. And if a topic presents itself that you think would be good to hear more about, let's catalog that during our conversation. I mean, things will probably strike a particular chord with you guys. And I would like to follow up on that essentially next week. At the same time, during our hour, I'm probably going to encourage the same thing. And I want to make sure we leave plenty of time for conversation. So I'm thinking that the presentation, shouldn't last longer than 30 or 40 minutes. I think we got a lot to talk about. I do have some great pictures of some local facades that we can go through one by one if we wanted to. I just don't think we'll have time for that particularly. I'll probably pick out a few examples. But yeah, other than that, there's a lot to talk about. From the photos that I've seen, it's like, I think you guys have a pretty good mix of historic and eclectic. I think that things have been changed in a lot of situations where you don't necessarily have buildings that were just as they were built. Is that sounding about right?
That's fairly accurate, yes.
Okay. So, that is the angle that you have to take on this, is that Main Street districts develop over time. History tends to build on itself. It always does. Some resources are worth restoring, which is kind of a secondary level of preservation that's a little bit more stringent. You have rehabilitating, which is the one you got to do to get the tax credits, and you can often have flexibility in that and not necessarily make something just like it was. And then you have restoration, which would be, this building was a lot more, it had a lot more prominence or importance, or its heyday was back at a certain particular time. There's maybe a major event. Maybe it was the original origin of the building, if it was had a lot of great architectural detail or something. So there would be cases to be made to restore buildings sometimes. There are a couple buildings downtown, and I don't think one of the pictures included it. A two-story building, was it a theater or something maybe? Bottom level. I'm just remembering I made a trip out there with my family last summer actually to do some hiking and play in the spring and all that. But I did get to see a little bit of the downtown, not enough time to really tour. Are we going to plan on a tour too, like walking around or anything like that?
I noticed in your notes, Larry, that you mentioned possibly coming for an in-person visit and maybe even doing a business community meeting where we could talk to the business owners and really kind of engage them. I love that idea. I'd love to cover that in this meeting and see how everybody else feels, but I think that would be a great way to get you here personally, kind of seeing everything and also engaging that business community into the process.
Yeah, I think during the visit, I think it's going to be important ideally we would have some semblance of a facade improvement program at that point. I don't know how far off we are from that. Do you guys have a sense of like how far are we from maybe developing a set of basic design guidelines and then offering some?
I think we're close. We're really close, Larry. And I'm going to jump in because we've got $15,000 budgeted for this year. 10,000 of it is for the facade improvement program. And I think we're looking at doing $1,000 awards for folks. I've got
Okay.
a whole list of questions regarding those $1,000. So I think one of the things that Patty and I have kind of been tossing back and forth is, how are we going to limit this, make this small and tight enough? We have to spend this money this year, 2023. So it has to be expended by December. So how do we kind of limit that? And if you get a good sense of our downtown, if you can make it, that would be tremendous, because then you
Yeah.
could really see the details of these facade improvements. I have no idea. I reached out to a friend of mine who's a painter, a house painter, and I just gave him a picture of a facade and I said, what would it cost to paint just the trim on here? And he said $3,000. And I'm like, oh my God. So it's like, okay, and he said, it just depends. There's a lot of variables in there. So I think having more of a trained eye like yours on the ground to take a look at these things and say, yeah, $1,000 is going to work, or maybe you got to bump it up to 2,000, or maybe this could be used as a matching grant. So we've got some sort of marching orders with the money, but there's a lot of details I think that we don't have worked out. What Patty and I were trying to come up with, strategize, is how do we make it simple for people? Like, here's glass replacement, or here's a sign improvement, or here's painting your trim. Here's some options, like check each box or other, and try to make it simple so that people don't have a lot of thought that they have to put into it. So we can be like, we don't want to point out their ugly baby, so to speak, but it's, if you can make it as easy as possible for people to go ahead and get this money so that they can get these improvements made, that's what we're aiming for.
Yeah, I have heard of this, and I've not seen it as a resource ever, but what if there was a document or something somebody could hold in their hand where they could rate their own building facade? So you'd go out in the street and you'd go, and it's challenging unless there's a really good one nearby where you're like, oh, that one's definitely really good. And everybody realizes that when they start looking at their own. But you can rate your own facade, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good is it, overall? And then, what do you think about the signage? What is that, a 1 to 10? And maybe just ranking ranking each element. How, is the paint in good shape if it's painted, or is the masonry in good shape? What about your door? Because, that makes a statement. How about your window displays? What about just, yeah, right. So, it could be a pretty quick questionnaire. Maybe that's something we could do during the tour for particular buildings. And that's kind of where I was leading, is maybe we figure out either before, like, 10 properties or something that you would like to talk with. And that'd be something for you and your design committee to work out. Or we go after something more like, this year, we're going to focus on upgrading signage, and they're going to have to follow these guidelines that we're presenting. Because we want a more of a consistent aesthetic, or maybe it has something to do with pedestrian level signage, or, where it might be window, like gold leaf lettering in some cases, or attractive perpendicular signs that can hang over sidewalks. It's really, so that's one element of signage. You can always spend $1,000 on that, and you can make a big impact, and you can actually help people's businesses. In terms of like getting folks in the door, ringing the registers and things. And the other side of it would be,
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's also like a general maintenance grant. I think that one could be very important, and essentially kind of set the tone for, in the future, maybe having some regulation around maintenance downtown. That's a hard pill to swallow for some folks, but there is something called the International Property Maintenance Code. And, if we have offenders, people that are just not taking care, like broken glass, things that are, either unsightly or dangerous, mold issues, people using buildings for storage, and you can see that, just different things that there's ways to, and that's one thing I wanted to know. Do you want me to kind of talk more on some of the legal aspects of, facades and maintenance and things like that? Because that kind of goes off into another field, or you just want me to stick with basically design?
I think what we're aiming for is basically design. Repairs, maintenance, I think, can fall into that. We do have, so we are CLG, and we do have design guidelines and standards in place. And I do have a draft application for a facade improvement grant that I've started, but I've got, like I said, I've got a list of questions with regard to that, and where are we going to go from this year? Hopefully we're going to use this money sort of as to prove up the success of something like this. And so maybe next year we get $25,000 and we can use that for larger grants or matching grants or something to do larger scale facade improvements. So we're really looking for something that's going to have as much bang for the buck as possible. I recognizing that $1,000 isn't a huge amount, and our main street is pretty good. We don't have a lot of broken glass. We don't have a lot of repair stuff, but there's definitely some, new paint that could be, done, painting of window trim, painting of door trim, maybe some hardware upgrades, cleaning things like awnings or replacing awnings. I think that would be a great option. We do have a few businesses that have those beautiful awnings. And then we have some signage, repainting signage, that type of thing. I mean, we do have some kind of poster child. We have a few that are kind of in a row. And I think you mentioned the theater. So the theater just in the last couple of years underwent a big facade improvement where they took down the sign, they repainted the sign, the marquee sign. It's our only marquee sign, and I'm so grateful that they kept the marquee sign. It would have been a lot less costly if they would replace it with a flat sign, but I'm so glad they kept that marquee sign. So we've got some great examples, I think, of what we're kind of hoping for.
One of the things, Larry, that Cindy and I have been talking about is how some businesses, and you probably have a whole lot more experience with this, some businesses may know exactly what they want, and some businesses don't have any clue and don't want to take the time to be burdened with that. So one of the things we had talked about, especially since the grant in the early stages will be only $1,000 potentially, is what about some sort of a menu of items that we suggest? So we're helping direct what their choices are. And it could be as simple as, here's a new sign, and this is the style that we can apply your information to. Or here's a new sign holder, a wrought iron pretty sign that hangs in a specific area. Or here's your options. And we've got $1,000 that we're willing to give you to do these improvements. Check the box for which one you want, and we'll go help you get those created. That was kind of one idea to minimize the work involved from the businesses and also increase the continuity with the elements that we're proposing for Main Street so that there's a consistency going down Main Street, whether it be flags or signs or sign holders or, anything like that, chalkboards that, with information on them, things like that. Is that something you've seen anywhere?
I have. I was the architect in Oklahoma for a number of years, and one thing that we would recommend a lot of times would be to do sort of a menu of different grants, and it really just opens it up a little bit, like you're saying, more specifically, so that folks go, oh, I need that. Like, so you might have a paint grant, some sort of a window grant, which could be, to improve the window display, things like that, because you actually do need to buy things and have a design and, to do a good one, lighting, one for awnings. You could do one for a new front door, or, to restore a front door. You could do one for maintenance. So you could have a variety of them. The thing you don't want to do is you don't want to have too many options for folks. So maybe, with this pilot year, as I might think of it, is that you could actually, come in and say, maybe the rate your building thing is not a bad thing. And you could kind of know, oh gosh, this building's purple and has nothing to do with their business image. That's not their logo. That's nothing to do with, they need their business to match their brand. And that's something that I think is very important, is that, we have a lot of flexibility with these buildings. And so each one's unique. And so each one needs to represent, it's literally the calling card for the business. And so you can do a lot with, old cool buildings just by adding different colors to things that you can paint, you can't paint brick, for example, really, with signage and different things like that. So working with each individual property is kind of important. I mean, applying kind of this mask of, all the signs have a certain fonts and different, it won't work, I don't think. Particularly though, I like the idea about maybe having flag holders, or maybe having, and maybe those be multi-purpose to do something else. Maybe, I don't know if you have hummingbirds downtown or something, but maybe they could, you give them, in the summer we put these out, and and we're going to put one on your business. Maybe something like that's only $50 a business, and maybe you just offer that to a wider bit of the community. Like one of the $1,000 grants is kind of a sweeping overall something. Maybe it's a Main Street decal they can put on the interior of their window, and a flag holder type thing or something. That'd be kind of neat. And,
yeah, we had talked about maybe doing a flower pot holder or something like that.
Yeah,
that's an interesting, that's kind of interesting direction, is rather than offering options, since we're on a limited time, rather than going out and saying, what do you need, and trying to work with individual businesses on their specific needs, maybe there's something we can come up with to offer. Here's what we're offering for facade improvement that doesn't require them to make decisions and us to customize. That's just a direction we might want to consider.
And I would just add in there, I would interject that if we're going to use, I think we haven't done, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think we haven't done a lot of outreach with our Main Street businesses thus far. So it would be awesome if we could bring this group of businesses, this our historic Main Street. Well, and I don't know what the scope of this is. I'm looking at our historic Main Street. So our Main Street boundaries extend beyond our historic Main Street, which is actually two sides of the street. It's Pagosa Street, and then it's also Lewis Street, so it's a block off, but that's, both of them are included in the Main Street program. But maybe we can bring the businesses together and say, look, this is what we're doing. We want to hear from you what your biggest needs are, and then we devise the program. Because I think going in and telling people what we're going to do, and we're from the government, we're here to help, even though CFC isn't necessarily government. I really want to get the question out there and say, what is it that you all need? And then maybe build something from that. I mean, we kind of already know what we can and cannot do. So based on what their responses are, we can devise a program from that. So I'd like to ask the question before.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, that could be something we do at the public meeting or open house or something, is that we actually divide up. These events actually can be wonderful for getting volunteers for the Main Street program also. In that you can basically, have pizza, it's after work, it's at dinner time, invite folks for that, and then say you're going to learn about the Main Street program and the design, particularly about design. I'll be there. Maybe we can get some other folks there, maybe from History Colorado or something like that. And if we could divide folks into interest groups, and this might be a whole nother different visit, but it'd be great to get folks in the groups that they were interested in. Not everyone's going to gravitate towards design and like thinking about design. I mean, they may be there for more information about it, but really figuring out, like, maybe just a call for volunteers during the meeting and say, we're going to need folks to help us shape this over the years, working with the town, and like, how do we make good decisions that are going to be visually impactful to the community and make us move in a really strong direction that is Pagosa, but also is relevant to history. I think a call for volunteers would be important during the meeting, like when we visit. And so we can work that out. I like the idea of some kind of a questionnaire or survey during that could be passed out, just a paper form with some check boxes or something. Because doing digital stuff, that's hit or miss. But if you give somebody a piece of paper and a pencil, they're going to complete it for you and you'll get it back. And, you could market this event as something that would be, very, I don't know how you'd phrase it, but something, important event, helping shape the future of downtown. Do you want to improve the aesthetics downtown? Is there something you'd like to see change? There's probably ways to phrase that for your local audience that would make people really want to be part of it. And honestly, that's how the program is going to really take off and win, and how like a facade improvement grant and things like that are tied to the program are going to win, is you do get public involvement. So you're absolutely right on that. And so yeah, us figuring that out right up front would make a ton of sense. So yeah, I agree, getting the buy-in from the public. But at the same time, wouldn't it be cool? Do you guys have like a brand or anything for Main Street put together, like a logo or something? Oh, cool. Let's see it.
Oh, you're fuzzy.
Can't see
You're
it.
fuzzy, Cindy.
Oh, it does that thing. Oh, cool. I like it. I like the colors.
So we just launched it at the 4th of July. Pickaxe came in and did a branding campaign for us, and we are
Oh, yeah.
excited to start planning our overall marketing campaign. So yes, this is a great time.
Well, I like it. And I'm glad you guys have already had Pickaxe because that's a great, didn't you guys have a lot of fun with that? Yeah, it's a pretty neat deal. And good folks. So what if we could get some decals printed off, the ones you can put inside your window that you can just peel off, like in a good size, maybe 8x11 or something like that, or square or something, novel. And we could have enough of those for people that came. And then actually to follow up the event for the folks that weren't able to make it, you could go around door to door and talk to each business that maybe didn't have one in their window yet or something. And, or, would you want to put this in your window? Do you understand what Main Street is? About this facade grant that we're so we could be targeted with these visits also. And that would be something that hopefully, and I'll put this on the list, you guys will have a good core working group that, I'm just going to call a design committee. But it really could be your board. It could be, but it could be this call for volunteers at this meeting to get that committee. And then they've heard the information and maybe they've drank the Kool-Aid. And so now they're ready to go talk to other business owners that they know. They're armed with the decals or, whatever that is, that's something. That could work really well. I think that could be pretty organic and at least getting the whole word out to everybody that the program exists. We're working on incentives. There is technical assistance available. Like I'll help any of these 10 businesses or however with, whatever their decisions need to be to make good ones. And, so I can review facade applications for you and all that. I wouldn't say I should be the sole reviewer of them. I think I'd let you guys kind of start that process and begin to understand, I'm going to train you somewhat next week in, beginning to understand like what to look for, maybe some good examples, things like that. And we'll always have this back and forth together. But yeah, I'd be glad to look at them. I think that's really, it's neat to see what people are wanting to do.
And I had some questions about having a design committee. I've been calling it like a design review board or not design review board, design committee. Like I said, we're CLG. And so for this particular area, I'm really focused on our historic downtown just because that's where we already have design guidelines and we have some additional, requirements. But as far as that goes, we'd love to get people who've got a design eye or who have a historic preservation eye or something along those lines that they could sit on that board so that we're making sure that we're including that, because I'm kind of the person who's always hitting people on the head with the preservation stick. It's like, don't forget we've got design guidelines, and I hate to be that person because again, I'm from the government. So if we had some champions or some people, but also who understand it from a like you mentioned, bringing in a branding, bringing in some vibrancy, not just to stick with the same old. I think there's a need to sort of balance the two pieces, the historic portion of it, as well as bringing in some sort of new fresh look to it as well. So how we make that happen, I guess, is going to be, the devil's going to be in the details, and that's where it's going to be really, really hard for sure.
Yeah, that's what it's every small change has the chance to make a big impact. It's, how do you do that?
Yes, exactly. And I think that's what I'm looking for. And that's what's going to be tough. That's why this has been such a challenge, because we've had this money for a while and then we had a staffing change and poor Patty's drinking from the fire hose. And I just keep throwing stuff at her. And the more effective that we can stand this up and make this work, I think the better the results will be. And what we really want to see is results the low-hanging fruit. I'm going to say the low-hanging fruit results that are going to get us some visibility. I know it's not a whole lot of money, but that's what we're hoping to aim for. And I think that design committee, our Main Street design committee, would be able to select the the ones that are going to keep, that they think are going to give us the most impact, whether that be paint changes over, you know, something that's not going to give them so much bang for the buck. Is that making sense?
Right.
You know what I think is the beautiful part of this whole discussion is that we don't have those relationships built with the Main Street businesses yet. And that's one of our goals is to, we're actually going to have a conversation at our next board meeting about having like a business buddy program where the board members that have businesses near them are going to interact with the businesses closest to them and kind of champion the whole Main Street program and explain to people. Because one of the questions that we got over and over again at the 4th of July parade was, what's that? What is that? Well, of course, they don't know what it is because we're brand new. We're just starting to launch everything. We're just starting to explain it. But the more we can get that message out, and what a wonderful way to do that with here's $3,000. Let's make you better. And that makes us better. And what a great way to introduce the program. So I'm excited about it. Do you think, Cindy, do you think some of the questions that you have, we should kind of float to Larry before we have our board meeting to kind of see if he's encountered some of those before? Or do you think there are things that we need to really flush out with the board?
You know, I would like to hear Larry's take on these. Larry, I have a whole page here of questions.
Goodness. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is
Sounds like my notebook of notes for your all's presentation here.
Exactly. Well, and like I said, I started drafting and I think I'm pretty well through a simple draft application and a process. And these are all the questions that came out as a byproduct of that. But
Sure.
I think I want to hear your perspective and then maybe we take it to the board. So one of the questions that I've had is with this first, I like the idea of it being a pilot program. With the first year being a pilot program, should we focus on a geographic location or should we open it up to our entire Main Street, which goes from, what is the extent? Does it go all the way to 84?
8 to 84, right?
8 to 84, which is about a mile and a half long.
Well, plus Lewis, and then plus part of Hot Springs. So there's a lot, you know, if you spread out 10 grant awards, you're not ever going to see them if one is on Hot Springs, one is on Lewis, one is at the end of 84. So that's an interesting point.
Yeah, we're gonna try to make $10,000 look like we did something big.
That's funny. It's funny that it goes all the way out to 84. What's all out there? I'm just looking at I'm looking at the aerial
businesses.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. The businesses go almost all the way down to 84. There's the River Center that's got several businesses in it. So there are businesses, and I think I wasn't around when those were established. I would imagine it's just to make sure that it was as inclusive as possible.
Generally, it's the downtown walking district is generally what it is.
Okay.
Okay.
Also, we were advised when we were setting that area of what the Main Street would be is to go bigger because it's harder to change it down the road. So try to be as inclusive as you can in your first definition of your defined area, to where you can see that over the next 10 or 15 years, you don't have to alter your map.
Yeah, sure. And I think all those folks should be invited to a future meeting. You know, I think if there's a way to get the word out, do you guys do things in water bills and stuff like that, like announcements, or is that too much trouble?
We do. We have a couple of different things. We use a town issued newsletter. We also have a engagement page called My Pagosa, and anyone who subscribes to that, we can send out things through that. Usually if we have a project associated with it, so if there was a major reconstruction project or something like the Main Street reconstruction, we'll probably put that on My Pagosa, and we send out newsletter blasts to everyone who's subscribed. We've got 800 or 900 people on that subscription list.
I think we've done bill stuffers in pause for other town initiatives as well. So that might be an option. We're working on an overall marketing strategy in our marketing communications group right now. And a big part of that strategy is going to be identifying the businesses that are included in the overall district, so that we can communicate directly with them in several different formats. So we're working on developing that right now. I love one of the things that you said, Cindy, though, about the historic Main Street, and wondering if we could define that and use that as just part of our pilot, since it is a little more of a specific area with hopefully a higher impact if we were able to hit 10 businesses. So that's something I would love to see us potentially do for at least the pilot, and then find out maybe from town council what their thoughts are and what, you know, what they're looking at for, if we do have success here, can we count on a larger amount next year so that we can really build upon this process rather than just this petering out. Maybe just getting kind of a feel from them might be a good thing too.
Well, and that was my sense from the mayor, is that this was kind of the seed money or the teaser money, if you will. It's like, okay, we'll give you this much. Let's see what you do with it. That's why I'm really honing in on that. I want to see something big happen so that hopefully they continue to give us money, hopefully more. And so in my list of questions, and Patty, that district's actually defined, it's Lewis Street and Pagosa Street, the 400 blocks. So between 4th and where essentially where Subway is, or the Bell Tower Park. So that's where it terminates in that.
Yeah, I'm looking at that. You know, you have that alley too between the two streets, which is pretty cool. I think you could do a lot with that for public events, and you don't have to close any streets. It's pretty neat.
It's really unattractive. It's going to take way more than 10,000. It's probably going to take, I don't know, James would probably laugh at me if I said
200,000
thousands of dollars to get that.
We're looking at that space, Larry, as a potential like Main Street market space, something, especially since we're looking at some upcoming Main Street construction that's going to possibly cause some issues getting into the front of those businesses. Again, once we've developed those relationships, talking about how we can do back alley entries into those businesses to help them stay vital while during construction, and then create some nice public spaces for events on the weekends that we don't have to close streets.
I agree. Yeah, you could light it. You can do all kinds of neat things.
Yeah, we want your input.
Yeah, we have a couple of construction projects right now that are kind of, until they're completed, I think it'll be hard to really see what that alleyway is going to look like. But we're also, one of the things that we've been trying to do very hard is ignite. I'm sorry, that's not the right word. That's a bad word to use in July in Colorado. To activate. Sorry, that's the word I was looking for. Activate Lewis Street as kind of a heritage and event street. And if we do that, weeknights, you know, a lot of the businesses are closed, the churches aren't open, you know, unless there's like a funeral or something like that, or even if we just close a portion of that block, to do some sort of heritage, bring in it is a part of our Main Street, is part of our historic downtown. And I think the thing that I keep trying to wrap in with the Main Street effort is to, and it's right in our name too, it's right in our logo, about celebrating our heritage. So it's not just about Main Street and commerce, but it's really celebrating our heritage, because when you do see our downtown, and people have told me this, and it breaks my heart, but because I'm kind of fond of our downtown, for obvious reasons, but people say, well, you know, your downtown isn't like cool like Durango's downtown or like Leadville's downtown or da. But our downtown has a rich heritage that some other communities might have had a lot more money so that they could build a much more stately looking downtown. Ours is richer in heritage. So I think the heritage piece and the culture piece is super important. We've got a huge artist community here. We've got some great assets that we'd really like to play off of in our downtown.
I think you have, and I mean, even, you know, I'm looking at Pagosa Street right now. You know, that has a lot more of the traditional looking Main Street, you know, appearance. I like the idea of putting some stuff over on Lewis Street there. Isn't it Lewis Street? Yeah.
Right behind.
Yeah, I like that idea of kind of dividing it up a little bit. I think so. The focus, it sounds like to me, that maybe we should even look at for the training next week would be just some basics on design and aesthetics, like, you know, what's good, what's not, like what do we do about, you know, materials, and how do we, you know, good substitute materials for old things, and also you know, why, maybe a little bit of the whys, you know, behind why things are the way they are, like why the facades are designed the way they are typically, you know, the older style. But you do have so many more contemporary aspects of some of the design downtown that to me, it feels like it is a very, I don't want to use the word eclectic over and over again, but I think the idea of eclecticism is that you're greater as each single entity is important, but as a collection, you have this vibrancy, but also you have to have harmony. So that's I think the general feel of what I'm thinking we need to discuss is how do we invite harmony so that everyone can have their unique individual business and building, and even district, like the Lewis Street Alley district, and the or the Lewis the arts district, or however you're wanting to call these. I don't know if I call them districts necessarily in your downtown, but maybe the downtown district, but not breaking it up too much. Let's hear some of the questions that you've got about the application and stuff.
Can I make a comment real quick?
Yeah.
Patty, I really like the idea of the decal. So if you could take that to the Marcon committee and let's start designing one. That way we can start building those relationships with the businesses and deliver a decal and let them know that they are included in that Main Street area.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
I love
that
it.
could be a really good outreach tool. Yep. And then depending on when James and Cindy, when that downtown business people meeting is going to be, it could possibly be the special invite for the Main Street businesses to join for that event as well, kind of dual purpose. So here you are in the Main Street district and we want you to be proud to be in it. And by the way, we're having this community get together and we want you to come.
Love it.
And I'm thinking this is probably that visit. I think we need to probably try to get at least Gail and I down there together. I know Tracy's visited recently, but if she can make it too, that would be wonderful. Have kind of our full team to talk about all the different points of the Main Street program and all that to the community. I think that would be important.
And it sounds like maybe the sooner the better, so that we can get the facade grants rolled out as an introductory program. This might be a good launch party really for Main Street overall, but really with a focus on facade improvement and beautification and being part of Main Street. So it might be a great thing to do as soon as we can coordinate it.
What day of the week is going to be the best day, you think, for your community? Or days?
I think Wednesdays, that's the fewest town meeting evenings.
Okay. So Wednesday evening, that could work out good for us, because then we could just come down sometime on Wednesday, drive down, and then have the meeting that night and maybe stay half a day the next day too, to have meet with some business owners and things like that. That could work out real well.
I also love the idea of that being a pizza party or something along those lines, and we'll take one of our Main Street businesses and utilize them to be able to help out to provide that food, and we could have beverages and pizza and come and learn more about the Main Street, feel part of the group. The call to action needs to be inviting to participate, inviting to be part of this group.
And I think you mentioned that the decals would be part of the giveaway or sort of the swag or the handouts or whatever for coming to that, and then we could use whoever doesn't have one. And the other thing I wanted to mention too, Larry, is that I had mentioned to Patty earlier on, could we get a poster that for anybody who's participated in this facade improvement, a poster that says this facade improvement was sponsored by the the Pagosa Springs Main Street, so that we've got something, and maybe they can, yep, there it is. Isn't that beautiful?
Powered by.
Yeah, there you go.
By.
That's what you need. Yeah, I think something about that size, or you can even go 11 by 17 or something too, if you wanted it to really have a big headline type look. And maybe they just say, since you got the facade grant, we'd like you to keep this up for the summer, or like at least a month or whatever.
Yep.
Something like that. But yeah, the decal as an invite, that's a great idea. I don't know if they can print on the back of the part that comes off when you do the decal, so that you'd have like a formal paper-ish type thing. Probably not.
We'll come up with something cute.
Yeah. Okay. How many people are going to be at the meeting next week?
13 board members, probably
All right.
16-ish people.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I'm just trying to think about how to time fielding questions and things like that too.
So Larry, I think you might know this already too, that we have a pretty dynamic board to where everybody really participates in what's going on. You know what I mean? So definitely leave time for questions because this is a very detail oriented, I would say, board, and they always have a lot of questions about things because they want to have the best impact.
Mm-hmm. And they have a lot of great ideas too. And sometimes they, you know, it's like a pop-up meeting. That's what I call it. It's like a pop-up meeting. They pop up with a new idea and it's like sort of can take on a life of its own.
And we have like
a fair assessment, but
Does happen.
mm-hmm.
and we have 3 or 4 members that are very well versed in historic preservation as well, and have a lot of history in Pagosa. So and you know, with Cindy knowing the design requirements and things like that. So there's some really informed members as well that'll have some really good questions and comments.
Great. That's
And
great.
just some background. So one of the members of our board is our mayor, and our mayor has been highly involved, and her mother is highly involved in historic preservation in our community. And she also operates a business on Lewis Street. So it's in that historic district. It used to be on the front side of the block, which is the more commercial side of that block, but they've moved to the back side of that block. So.
Very good.
So do you want to go through some of your questions, Cindy?
Sure. I'm trying to look at some of these things. I think some of them are really more geared maybe towards the board as I'm looking through them now. Scoring. Oh, one of the things I think I have one. I have a scoring matrix that I've got my eyes on, and I think that's probably what the decision boards will be using to whether they're going to grant this, you know, whether they're going to grant the approval of the $1,000. My recommendation is that we have a board of probably 5 to 7 people who can get together quickly on essentially on pretty short notice, like a 2 or 3 day notice. Like it's going to happen every Thursday as long as we have an application. So it's a standing meeting. And then if there isn't any application, we don't need to meet. But that and it could be done by Zoom. I'm trying to make this really kind of nimble and flexible and responsive to everybody's schedules. Everybody's busy. You know, I understand all that, but I do want to get something good and going as soon as we possibly can. Kind of have some questions around mechanics of it in terms of if we have this $10,000 and say we have an overwhelming response, or we have 20 people apply. I want to make sure that we're able to pick. I guess that's not really the question. The question really is, they're going to probably trickle in. So we get 2, and then maybe we get 1, and maybe we get 3. But I'd rather, is it more advisable, I guess, to hold on to them or to review them as we get them? Because again, if we're trying to make the impact and we're worried that we're not going to spend all the $10,000. I think we'll be able to spend the $10,000, but what we really want to see is we really want to see those most impactful ones come forward. That's completely out of our control. So how do we sort of mediate the getting the applications in with making sure that we're saying yes to the right applications in a super timely manner? Is that that question?
Yeah, so I think it's marketing. Number one is, you know, making sure that the outreach is more directed at the, you know, where it needs to go. And then, you know, in terms of, let me try to get my thoughts together here. I would probably, instead of maybe having them have a whole the time every week, I would say, let's have all the applications due on the 1st of every month. Like that's when, if you're going to put one in, you've got to have it in by the 1st of the month. Anything after that, we're going to review it the following month, or something like that. Or maybe you can review twice a month. Maybe if it's after the 1st of the month they put it in, you'll review by the 1st of the next month, or something. You know, however you feel like, if you however fast you want to keep that process going. But I don't know if I'd do every week. That's demanding kind of a lot of people to kind of go, oh, I was supposed to go somewhere, but probably need to stay or have to be in, in self-service or,
rolling is good, or maybe twice a month, 15th of the month. And as long as they've got it in, 7 days in advance of the meeting date or something, we'll figure that detail out. I think it's going to depend on what board members come to sit on this committee. I think it'd be good to have maybe a couple Main Street board members, and then maybe some people from our Main Street businesses that would also sit on that. But again, I think it's going to be important to have people who've got some understanding of historic preservation. And this, you brought this up earlier, Larry, maybe having our CLG person. I will reach out to Lindsay. She's our CLG. I don't know what her coordinator, I think is her term, but she's my sort of technical expertise when it comes to anything historic preservation in our downtown, but maybe she's got some ideas around that.
Yeah, I would reach out to her, definitely. She'd be a good person to come to the community event too.
Yeah, I've got that written down to invite her and see if she can make that.
Yeah.
Has the date been set for that community event yet, or when you guys want to meet with those downtown businesses?
No, but let me talk to, like we heard, it probably need to be a Wednesday. Let me talk to, we got a team meeting today, so I'm going to put it on our agenda, and then we can talk about that and see, maybe give you guys some options on some times that we could all make it potentially.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yes. And James, I'm going to ask you, I know we had talked about doing the Main Street reconstruction sort of open house, not thinking that was going to be in conjunction with this, but would you like to see that in conjunction, or do you want to do that as a separate meeting? We had talked about doing that in July or August, but it sounds like this might supplant that.
I think it's a good time to introduce it, but I think it'll be too much information to jointly combine the two topics.
Yeah.
Depending on how fast we can get the facade meeting together, that may determine when I bring the reconstruction project to them. And some of that may depend on when CDOT needs that information back. So that's probably sooner than later too. So
are you thinking, because what I was thinking almost is that next week's meeting is really to inform the troops like you guys and the board on some basics about design, and begin the thoughts of how because they really need to be the ones that are promoting preservation and good design and those kinds of things in the community, and that's really how it spreads. But I was kind of thinking that the community meeting would maybe be when we do some of the design tours and things, but then at the same time we could do that evening event, and we could have that be the time that's more geared towards here's the whole Main Street program, and of course design is an element of that. So I'd probably say something on that, have some slides or something. So I was kind of seeing that as a multi-purpose visit, and if you will. Does that sound right?
that sounds good.
Okay. Yeah, we could do that. Even if I need to stay 2 nights or whatever, we'll figure it out.
Great.
It's a nice place. We recommend you stay as long as you can.
Oh, I know it is. It's a beautiful part of the state.
Shameless plug, sorry.
Yeah, you bet. No, it's beautiful. Okay, what else do I need to know, or what else do you want to ask about on the app? Or
yeah, let me ask this question. What do you think? So as far as payment of the award, I've looked at a lot of the different things for pulling all those resources together. I've looked at some of those, and some of them, most of them were paying out the award after the construction is completed, after the repair is completed, and there's some sort of a report that they do and they get their reimbursement. Would you recommend that? I mean, I would probably stand behind that recommendation just because I work for the government. That's how we work. But do you have any experience with them being paid out upon half and half, like a down payment portion, so that they can buy the paint or the supplies or what have you, and then getting the completion portion at the end? It's kind of hard to administer that something when it's this small of an amount too.
yeah, for $1,000, I don't think I would do that. I think I would just, the people have credit cards, but it would be important to get them the money within the month.
Okay,
If that makes sense.
Yep.
Like the month that they spend the money. So that might be very important to note, is that they'll be invoiced for, like, say, a sign after it's, they'll have to pay for it kind of after it's done typically, right? So within that month afterwards, they would get the money so they could pay back their credit card, just so that I think that's the thing that's important about like making payments. I think in a timely way is probably the most important part about the grant administration. I mean, the review is important, but when they spent the money, you could kind of assure them up front that, hey, we'll have you the money in, 20 days or whatever is like a good, solid number that you guys can do.
And we typically pay invoices every week. It's usually
Every
on
week.
Fridays.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
we
that's
pay
great.
every week. So perfect. Okay.
One of the questions that Cindy and I have talked about is there's a lot of residential along our Main Street and, a little bit even in the historic Main Street area. Should any of this include residential, or is there a legitimate way to exclude residential? How does that work? Have you seen that?
Well, are there, I mean, like in Lyons, Colorado, that I drove through this last weekend, there, a lot of the houses have been turned into business / home things, where it could be an owner occupied business. It could be just a business. I think that, as long as they're part of the Main Street district, that's something I can offer technical assistance on. And so I would include them, even if it is residential, because honestly, like, let's say it's kind of a historic commercial building, but they've been grandfathered in and they live on the first floor and up front and all that, which that has happened in a lot of places and multiple times in some places. Then we need to figure out a strategy to help them bring that back to be a commercial enterprise right off the sidewalk, even if it's only a 25-foot deep setback for commercial or something. That's the goal, is to, but if it's a house, then that's just different. I mean, it was built as a house. Then if it's a business, then it can be a business. But if it's a house, it's, they're still using it for the intended purpose it was built. And should it harmonize with the district? Yeah, I think it should. So, how do we do that? And this is more about, let's all think outside the box, these meetings. It's not necessarily like I've got all the answers here, because I don't. It's every one of these projects will be a project by project basis. And it's like, well, what do your neighbors' paint colors look like? What is the, overall tone of downtown, things like that.
Well, and could we give residential its own love and a future program? I mean, could that be something where we could make the residential really feel they don't really collaborate much with the business community, it doesn't seem to me. Could that be a specific program for residential historic buildings within our Main Street area later on? And right now we focus on businesses, but how do we do that without making anybody feel excluded?
Well, let me add this to help clarify some of that. So on our Pagosa Street, I think any residences are not going to be storefront residences. Now on Lewis Street, we have 4 residences on Lewis Street. 3 of those are short-term rentals, and one of them, someone actually lives there. So 2 of them were built as residences and are still used as residences, and they're both short-term rentals. And the other 2 were office conversions. So we really don't have a whole lot of businesses, and I think that the short-term rental, and I don't want to exclude anybody, and it feels like I'm excluding somebody if we do limit it to just the 400 block, because that leaves only really one person who lives in a unit that's solely devoted as a residence, which it wasn't built as a residence, but he uses it as a residence. But I would not suggest necessarily the short-term rentals, because the short-term rentals have a substantial positive cash flow. Does that make sense?
Okay, sure.
I almost feel like excluding them
From the facade grant.
From this, at least for this, maybe for this first go round. I don't know. I'm not sure. I feel like I know where you're going, because I know what house we're talking about. And it's like, yeah, he'd benefit from some facade improvements, but I want to open it up to maybe.
My concern is the negative impact of exclusion. Do we anticipate, and how do we word and how do we communicate these things are excluded without getting a negative impact? That's my concern.
How about you use the 160 facing businesses as the start of this pilot program?
Yeah, and that could be, I was going to say the same thing, Emily. I think that's going to be, what you really want to improve is that visibility as people drive through town. They're not driving on Hermosa Street. They're not driving on Lewis Street. They're on 160. And whether or not that's concentrated in the 400 block in the historic district or district wide, I would concentrate on Highway 160. That would be my recommendation.
So just 4th Street to Lewis. So Goodman's Corner to Bell Tower, basically.
Yeah,
160 facing.
that's,
It could be, I think what they're saying is it could be wider than that, it could be longer than that. But I think if we get outside, if we say it's more than the historic district, which I'm okay with us doing that, I have no one way or another, but if we get larger than that, then I think we'd have to extend it. It would be difficult to limit it to say, to include what we call the downtown East Village, which is where Jeremy's business is and where Engels and Volker is and Riff Raff. Those businesses are in that downtown East Village, but then once we cross the river, we're in the East End district. Once again, if we're getting too far, if we're getting beyond kind of 2 blocks in geographic terms, then I think we're going to have a harder time, I think, making that impact that we're looking for too.
Well,
Well, I
and this
think-
is pilot, this is the pilot.
Right. I think we need to maybe look at a smaller area because this is the first pilot year. So we want to make it easier for all involved. I would recommend, concentrating it on that Lewis to 4th Street segment of the historic district. And, and then this is going to be a discussion for a larger group, but, I'd almost err on giving them 1,500, let's make a splash, $1,000. I know Cindy mentioned I agree. I mean, it's not cheap to paint, $1,000 just to paint trim is only going to get you a quarter to a third of the way there. So,
So 2 things, Larry, I want you to know, is that the CDC also has a microloan fund that our board is willing to release those funds to be complementary to this grant program. So a person wants to repaint all the trim on their building, it's a $3,000 bill. We give them $1,000 or $1,500 grant. I can give them a very low interest, favorable loan product that will work for them, extend it out a year and they can pay me $100 a month for 15 months or whatever. So we do have that option to offer that microloan product to enhance this grant program.
I like that. And you can put that on the application for sure. I think that's a good thing to add. Now, just from experience though, when you start, when it's really regarding borrowing money, when they're like, oh, but I'm getting this other money for free, they'll probably just, people really go for like matched money a lot of times, and they'll go for free money, obviously. But it's hard to, I would still promote the loan. I think it's good because if they, like let's say I help somebody with a design sketch and it's obviously more than they're budgeting or something, or they want to see the kind of the pie in the sky ideas, then that could come into play.
Well, I think this
And then also,
I'm glad you brought that up because we could do it this way. We could offer $1,000, no strings attached, or we could say if you want to, if you have a bigger scale project and you want to go for up to, I don't know what your limit is on those microloans, but say it's $1,500, we could go up to a $1,500 loan, a $1,500 grant if they wanted to also apply for the $1,500 matching microloan. And then they get $3,000, or whatever that number ends up being. We can use it as a matching program.
The other thing I want to do during your training, Larry, that I think might be a good safety net only for us is to brainstorm a couple ideas that would work in our Main Street area, such as flag holders or lamp flags or planter hangers or something like that, in case we aren't able to get all this grant money out. Maybe it just doesn't go anywhere. We still have a safety net that we can implement something that will make a splash in our community in time to hit our deadline by the end of the year.
Yep.
Yeah, you're talking about the elements of stickability. So stickability elements, things that make people want to stick around. Those can be subtle things. Those could be like, painted pigs on different point. I mean, whatever this theme is and whatever you guys are, you can express that. And I've seen all kinds of funny things like the big board games, all the kinds of things that, those can be really positive. It just really comes down again to like the lot by lot, like if they have a vacant lot, like how do you activate it? It, so really the way I would offer training, this would be a whole nother topic, honestly. Like this would be like public space. Like there's a private space, which is essentially, because everything's a zero lot line, it's basically the buildings. And then you have public space, which is sort of everything else. And so public space design includes like streetscape parks design, wayfinding design, different things like that, bikeability, walkability, those kinds of things. I mean, I definitely have some slides on that. But I think maybe we could just come up with some ideas. I'd like it to be something kind of novel though, that would fit with your all's brand and identity. And that's why just the random idea of, I don't know if you have hummingbirds downtown, but something like a hummingbird feeder / 4th of July flag holder, something like that would be a great thing, and people would probably use it because they're like, but you may not have that. So something like that, though, something that's unique to you guys. I don't know what it would be. It doesn't have to be expensive.
I was just in Monte Vista recently, and I loved seeing they have the crane festival every year. And it was so cool to see all the crane art everywhere and different ways that they used crane art. So something like that, if we could come up with something cool like that, and it might even play off of some of those icons that we're in development, with our new branding. There might be something we can do with that to kind of make it Pagosa. And, but yeah, I love that idea.
So that's a whole separate thing. I think that it'd be something to brainstorm with the board before, because I'm not going to be able to come up with the solution. I mean, I think you kind of see where we could go with it. It could also be, you could design a public amenity. Like you could have a thing. It could be like for a space between buildings where where you guys own it, maybe, or maybe a corner, or maybe a new sign. Or, really, there's so many options. Just spend a few $1,000s, and there's matching money available too. So like this, there's a CDOT grant that, gosh, you can go for like $250,000, and it only takes a 10% match. So like you could use the money for a CDOT grant to actually do some, and they're focused on like public health and walkability and
revitalization grant that you're talking about.
Yeah, that one. And but you can do I mean, there's all kinds of things, physical improvements. I mean, good stuff, like paving a lot, making it into a multi-generational park. I mean, you could really push that. You could really move your money as a match if you don't spend it, but you need to think about that grant cycle. I'm not sure when they're due, but I think it's a rolling grant.
27th and August 27th, or no, September, I believe. So we're probably going to miss the July one, but we're going to hit the next one, I think.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we have some ideas for that, and that marketplace area is part of that in the alley. So we've got ideas, but that brought up another question for James and Cindy. Does the town own the alleyway next to Jim Smith Realty that goes down to the river?
It's private property, but we have an easement for public access.
Darn. It's a steep little alleyway, but it's a great little alleyway that we could have done something fun in.
It's very steep. It's very steep.
It's an ice skating alley during the winter.
Here's one for you guys. I just glanced at my email, the Main Street Spotlight. I don't know if you get this yet, Patty, or any of you guys get this, Emily, from Main Street America today, is beat the heat this summer by using downtown design. It says the world is experiencing record-breaking heat, and I'm thinking something like misters or something like that could be a pretty cool thing to have, especially around you got the waterfront there, basically along the river. And what if those were kind of along Pagosa Avenue there, and at kind of some key points where those are pretty neat. I mean, and you definitely remember them.
Yeah. That's a great idea.
We should really activate the go with the flow, especially James, if you're going to have a CDOT update meeting, we could introduce the go with the flow, which will have the cone zone survival kit and other parts to it, but that'll be our branding for the downtown reconstruction project, to be able to just make it a positive and not a negative.
That sounds great. See, that's a design project right there. You guys are already doing this stuff. Well, what other
So Larry,
questions do you have?
do you have enough to go off of?
Oh yeah, sure, plenty.
We can
I think
give you
if
any
anything,
information.
yeah, I think I've got enough to, because really uh, I could train on facades on, it could be a full day workshop, honestly, with all the different topics there are. It just depends on the level of, and that's why I'm thinking, you guys hopefully took some notes today. Maybe you send me an email or something that says, here's some stuff we didn't have time to talk about, but these are important things that we need to know about, or that you should know about before the meeting. And I'll incorporate all that. And, but yeah, I mean, I think getting at least through everything around facades, and like, because there's even some things, dealing with economics that are really important with facades to understand. So I'd like to at least have a couple slides on that. So stuff like that. And then, obviously we can talk a little bit about grants. How much do you want to talk about the grant program during, my time next week? Any at all, or is that something you're just going to cover? I think you guys probably got that in the bag, right?
Yeah.
In terms of,
Well, I don't know that we've really talked about it a whole lot in the meetings, but I think that we want to talk about facade improvements under the umbrella or the auspices of this is a grant program. And
Gotcha.
that's the point that we're talking about this, and that we hope, I think that that's the way we have kind of tee it up, is that we hope that, this $10,000 grows into more money, and then maybe we can use CDC money in the future as matching grant, because we want to be able to roll this as a pilot program. If we're going to do this as a pilot program, we're going to focus here. We'd like to be able to roll it out and bring it out to the entirety of our main street at some point, so that everybody's included in this. And that's our goal with this. And I wanted to go back to, you mentioned something about economics. I didn't see this in other places, although, no, I did. I'm not exactly sure how to word this, but what I'm looking for is, in terms of this program, that when we are completed, we'd like to go back to the businesses, maybe say 6 months later, a year later, and have them complete, or even as they get this, how many customers do you have, so that we get some evaluative metrics, so that we can take a look at this and say later, the town invested $10,000, CDC put in another $10,000. So for our $20,000 investment, we saw an increase in business traffic of 20% overall, or something like that. So that we're giving the businesses who get the awardees, we're giving them a heads up to make sure that they're counting these things, so that we can say, we think that this is attributable in general to the facade improvements.
That's great. I think that's really good future thinking. I mean, you guys can see sales tax revenues, right? Like, I guess it's a broad, how granular is that? Something I should know, but I don't really, you can't tell per business.
We don't collect it. We receive it from the county, so we don't have that fine, minute detail of where it comes from.
And it's hard to ask a business to provide that, because people that really buy it, they feel like that's going to really step into their back pocket or whatever.
That's their private information.
We could ask for their general
increase in sales tax percentage.
Right.
Yeah, increase in like month over month sales tax or something, percentage or something.
Yeah, or their traffic increases, or even what I find even more meaningful is some of the less quantifiable, the qualitative data, things like, wow, somebody come in and said, wow, we love what you did with we love your new door. I mean, a new door is an enormous invitation for people. So if they get 3 more customers who say something about their door, yay, it's worth it.
Maybe that's something we could even provide to them as kind of like a little scorecard. How many positive comments did you get? Because relating a growth in business to a facade improvement, to me, is a stretch personally, because there's so many things that affect the, an increase in business. And so for them to kind of attribute their increase in business to a little bit of paint might take a little bit of a pride hit from the business, because it's really about how they run their business and the great product that they have. But if we had some sort of a scorecard where we could say, how many people came in and rated, or we had a QR code where they could rate the business, and we could collect that data for like how much they appreciate the color or the new sign, that might be a really great way to kind of build that enthusiasm around it too.
Or even just trying to capture some of that qualitative, the comments or feedback. Maybe feedback is a good way to look at that.
I love it.
What's your feedback then? Terrific. Yeah, I know it's really hard. There's been other communities who have looked at, they wanted their, increase in sales, and I'm like, but is it because I got a new paint job, or is it because my stuff is that awesome, right? How do you make sure?
Yeah. I'll work on some ideas for that, because I have some ideas for how we might be able to make that fun, bring kind of attention
awesome.
to it, bring attention to it, not only from the businesses, but from the community. And maybe even it's a competition. I mean, which facade improvement was the best? Which one do you like the most? Something like that.
Wow.
Yep, I like it.
Well, if you can't tell, Larry, we are really excited about this.
I'm
With all of the
gathering that.
questions and ideas that have come through, and this is just a small little piece of the group. So
Yeah, it's my time is like now trying to get the most meaningful information together, so you guys can, in the short time we'll have next week, be able to convey some bit of Main Street that you guys can take forward. And it's not to say that we couldn't do specific trainings going down the road too. This is specific, but it's only to a certain amount. Like, well, we'll just see what it comes out to be. Because maybe there'll be enough in the presentation that we'll have the topics divided far enough that if there are questions, I have tons of information on everything, like from window glass to trim, like to original storefront construction from wood, I have a lot of files that I have this information in.
I think that would be super helpful for if we do stand up, a separate Main Street design committee or Main Street design board, to have that training available for them for additional support. Because again, I think it's going to be really important there's a slight nuance between lime green and chartreuse green that's going to make or break a facade change,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what they have to understand. I can't even say that I know the difference.
Well, it sounds like you're on the right track.
Larry, did Sherry send you some pictures of our actual downtown?
Yeah, I'm looking at them here. She actually did a real great job. She labeled all the pictures and then gave me some text on each building. So, I'll be able to pick out a few of these and we can talk about, like, what would you do here? Kind of stuff like that.
great.
I think that would be very helpful in the training, because we do have some visual people in the room, and that way you can hit both sides.
Right. Definitely. Yeah.
And
thanks for reminding me of that, because that's a bit of content there. Well, we'll try to roll that into the end and have some, after we've talked about some basics, and then have the Q&A follow that time, because I think that'll kind of like segment the hour pretty well. And, if anything, I'd hate to, cut questions short, but I think if we have to move that direction and then just have follow-up questions be emailed and then it could be shared back to the group, kind of that, we can always do that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, because we're going to end up having to kind of be the liaison. Some team, maybe the design review board, we're going to have to understand what you're going to tell us about, like, best practices and where to get the information, so that we can help the businesses also understand that same information. So that'll be great to at least have a few examples and how you would approach it and how we can help the businesses approach it.
You bet. Yeah. We'll come. Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you guys. That'll be a good meeting. I'll try to get there about 15 minutes or 10 or 15 minutes early. Should I do that?
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay, let me make sure I've got that. Yeah, I can do that.
Well, and actually I'm going to try to limit it to like the first 5 minutes of the meeting will just be our kind of getting our stuff in order for you to speak. So don't worry about coming too early. We're going to have to get through a few of those things, and then we'll launch right into yours.
Okay. That sounds
good. And are
good.
you coming in person, Larry?
No, not for this one. I can't make it this time.
Okay.
But yeah,
I just got confused when you're like, I'll come 15 minutes early. I'm like, is he coming in person?
Oh no. Everything. Gosh, it seems like everything is. It's really changed the game. At least having these meetings, because I don't know if you remember before, but we didn't have a lot of face-to-face online meetings. I mean, they were occasional, but they weren't regular business. And I think it's pretty neat how small the world has gotten. I mean, it's strange, but and then when I come meet you guys in person, you're like, oh, you're taller than I thought you were, and stuff like that. But I think that's just the new norm, and we're trying to embrace it. We've got several communities around the state, and did a travel is hard sometimes to get every place in in a week or something like that. So it's helpful to have it. It's helpful to do this one, but we're going to have a nice event. Whether it's me and hopefully the rest of the team, I'll put that on our agenda to talk about, and we'll look for a time, like I guess next month. Does that sound right?
Yeah. I think the sooner the better.
I think
Okay.
so too. We got to spend that money. The longer we wait, the harder it is to get rid of. That's why I want to come up with a safety net. If for some odd reason this grant, just doesn't get the attention it deserves, or we want it to have, we still have a fallback way to be able to still enhance the Main Street area. And if we don't use all of our $5,000 on events and other stuff, which I find that hard to believe that we wouldn't, if flag, holders or whatever can fall in there, we might just spend the rest of that $5,000 in the flag holder. So
yeah,
I just want to, talk about that as just a fallback area, or we could build it into the plan for next year, one or the other.
Yeah, I think an afternoon on Main Street, kind of out there with the decals, talking to people when we get ready to launch and really start talking. And we can do that sooner than later. I think that's going to guarantee us that this program is going to be successful, because we're walking out and asking someone, do you want $1,000? Can we help you spend $1,000 to make this better, this whole downtown better? So I really think the plan B is great for next year's planning. I don't think we're going to need it this year. I think we're going to find lots and lots of takers. That's Pollyanna coming out, but that's okay.
So I'm thinking, so you guys are going to have at least a couple weeks to get, that'd be fast to get the decals back in your hands.
Well, and we got to plan the meeting and everything. I'm actually looking at maybe that 3rd or 4th week in August. Does that make sense to everyone? That just gives us some time to pull it together, get things printed, get it communicated, send out invitations. Actually, the first thing we need to do is generate that list, and I'm going to need your help, Cindy, on that. We need to get a list on Friday. Yeah, we need a list together so that we can start communicating. And so I think we need a good amount of time to pull the pieces together to get the participation that we want.
Yeah,
because it's community wide, and you do want to put it out on the different media networks and sources, definitely. And then it's hard to predict, like, who's going to come, how many are we going to have,
in
you
this
could do RSVPs, that'd be good to at least get a partial count. But and so those weeks are looking pretty good. I think the earliest that I could really conceivably do it would be that week of the 14th, which is the second week. And
yeah, I think that's too
August is a long month. Yeah.
And
so
we have a CDC meeting on the 16th in the evening, so that one wouldn't work.
So the next one is the
23rd.
I'm not sure what's going on there. I have an out of office on there, but I think it must have been a mistake. That should be fine, like the 23rd. And then the next week too is even the next one I have less stuff, but so I'll talk to the team and see if they could maybe help do it on the 23rd or the 30th. Does that sound okay?
So keep in mind, on the 30th, you're going into a holiday weekend, and how many people are going to be out of town or whatever.
Yeah,
23rd. I think you could get away with the 30th. You're not going to have as good of attendance as you will on the 23rd.
I agree.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
I feel like the 23rd would give us time to pull it together, and would still give us time to complete the program by the end of the year. Do you feel that way, Cindy, or do you feel like it's getting too late?
I think when if we're on the 30th and we're staring at September right around the corner, people are going to be like, too late this year, I'm not going to get a construction. Right now, our construction crews are at least 6 weeks out. So to think that we're going to get anything done after September is going to be a tough one, but we're going to do what we can. And I'm going to try to stay Pollyanna.
Well, and these are smaller projects, so we really don't need a full-on construction team for a lot of what we're going to do. And maybe you and I can work on that kind of menu idea of maybe 3 to 5 items that are offered that we know we can get quickly and we can customize for the businesses as an offering as part of that, making it quicker and more cost effective and smaller chunks. So
Yep. Small bite size.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right on.
For teeth.
Okay, we'll try the 23rd. Hopefully
Okay.
they can join me, and I can kind of actually see here. Hey, it looks like everybody's kind of free then. So hopefully that, at least for that day. So we'll have to see. There is another. Yeah, we'll see what we can do.
Sounds great.
Just let us know.
Yeah.
Thank
Good to
you
see
so
you guys.
Yeah, you too.
You.
See you
Great
next. We'll
meeting.
see you next week. Yeah.
Okay, just reach out if you have any questions before then, and then we'll reach back to you if we have anything that we'd like you to include or that we didn't get covered comes up after the meeting. And we're really looking forward to sharing it with the whole group.
Yeah, I wish you would. If you do think of anything, just shoot a quick email, and you can include everybody in. It's in the meeting now, and then we can all have those. Just everybody's in the loop that way.
Sounds good.
Perfect.
All right.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, you guys take care. Have a good rest of the week.
Okay.
Thanks, Larry.
Bye.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Bye.
Take care.
Thanks. Thanks, Cindy.
All right,
Thanks,
bye.
James. Bye-bye.